We all know the pain of creating our own worlds for D&D, for other TTRPGs, and we know that it can be a really time-consuming process. So I'm here today in this video to show you guys how it can be quick and easy and painless. Over the course of half an hour, I'm going to go from taking a blank piece of A4 paper and creating this. In half an hour, with no help, I'll show you the tools that I'm using, things that can be found in any ordinary home, and the process that I'm using to make it go even quicker. So strap in and we'll see how the ride goes. Hello adventurers and welcome back to the Red Quills. My name is Ryan and today we're going to be making a fantasy map in 30 minutes. I've got my clock set here. We have half an hour until we finish this map. And in order to do that, we need to get a few things ready, namely a piece of paper. This one's 120 GSM thick, so it's about the same thickness as something you'd get into a printer. I'm using A3 here so that I can tear the edges, but you can use A4 as well. I got a couple of acrylic paints, one in burnt sienna and one in blue. I've prepared them over here. I've got a pot of tea and I've got several fine liner pens. I'll take you through what I'm using as I use them, and at the end we're going to come out with something that looks pretty good. So, let's get started. Now the first thing that I'm going to do when I start this map is I'm going to tear the edges, folding them over first so that I can get a clean tear, and then going all the way around the outside of the paper that I want to use. I'm going to tear it off so it looks a little bit rough, like that. Now, when you're creating your map, be aware that subtlety is key. As you go through on the process of ripping these edges, fold it over twice to get a clean edge. Otherwise, you're going to, as I'm going to do here, mess it up a little bit and make it a little bit more ragged, which is fine if that's what you're going for. But overall, I'd recommend something that's a little smoother with only a little bit of roughing around the edges. And then, once we're done, we get our handy dandy pot of tea, and we're going to wet the paper that we've got. Now you'll notice that I did this on this activity mat because of this very reason. You want to do this somewhere that you're not going to be spilling tea everywhere. So if you want to do it in your kitchen, you can do that. If you want to get an oven tray, I would also recommend that. All right. Now what you want to do is you want to stick the tea on there and give it 1 minute to soak before we stick it in the oven at about 160 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. We dab away at the map, getting some of the excess off. And then when it's still wet, but not dripping, we can take it and put it in the oven for 5 minutes. All right, now my map finished a little bit before 5 minutes was up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get some of this acrylic paint that we prepared earlier by mixing a little bit of tea with a little bit of brown, and I'm going to do the mountain shapes. Now you got to make sure that your paper is dry before you do this, otherwise it's going to spread unevenly and look splotchy and awkward. Don't water it down too much either. We want to avoid it looking like it's acrylic paint by being too thick. But if you make it too watery, you're going to get splotches, you're going to get weird little tangly bits. All right, we're about 10 minutes in now. I got these mountains going. Mountains are super easy, guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this burnt sienna to shade in the dark side of the mountains. I always tend to assume the shading on my maps comes from the east, as if the world is experiencing dawn. Now, if you've seen my method for mountains on other videos, you You might recognize these shapes, but overall, I'm just keeping them really, really simple so that we don't run out of time while I'm here. This should only take us a couple of minutes to get these mountain shapes in. We're about 12 minutes in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a thick brush with some of this white paint, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a preemptive border around the exterior of the map. And this is one of the reasons that we've added a little bit of water to the acrylic, is so that it can stay malleable after I've done an initial layer. You can see I'm doing that here. I'm going to come through, I'm going to make a bit of a coastline. I'm going to make a bit of a bay. Just a happy little bay there. All right. Now that those rough shapes are done, I'm going to come through with a thicker layer of the blue. Keep pushing it out. The water will help it to pool together, so that we can create a fairly solid layer of color over the ocean without making it look like we've got a lot of different brush strokes. All right, 13 minutes now. I'm going to get a thinner brush. Going to do some rivers. And remember, keep in mind the way that watercourses tend to run from mountains to the sea, following the gentlest course, the easiest course. So you see how here, these two rivers imply that there's a high point between them, highland that reaches up towards this mountain. You can also use a thinner brush to go down the coastline if you like. Add in a bit more detail. Add in some coastal islands. You can even add in some deltas or marshlands, if that's what you want to do. But overall, don't spend too much time here. Right, 14 minutes. I'm going to come through with a thinner brush. Going to go back to this burnt sienna. I'm going to make a compass in the corner here. I'm going to start by making a really simple cross. Like that, we don't need to go overboard. And I'm going to fill it out to make it look more like a compass. Adding points. Adding some midway dots on the exterior. Drawing circles is hard. Drawing crosses is less hard. And if you know where those midway points are, and you know where the midway points between the midway points are, you can come up with something pretty good. I'm going to just put a little north, south. Ooh, it's been cut off. Great. That implies that the map has been damaged. Maybe some information is missing. Certainly means that we can have a bit of fun with the implications of that. All right, just over 15 minutes. We've got an outline. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a medium thickness fine liner. You can use a Sharpie for this. You can use whatever you want. Just use a dark pen. We're going to go over the mountains. We're going to outline them as quickly as we can so that we have some shapes more defined and usable for navigation. All right, we're sitting at 16 minutes now. I'm going to come in, I'm going to use this white out pen over the ocean, which should be mostly dry by now. Really hope it's mostly dry by now. I'm going to use this pen to create that ripple effect that we so love to see on fantasy maps. Now the edges already look a little broken because of the way that I did them, which is fine. We can make them some fun little coastal shelves. I'm going to go through and we're going to make a couple of layers of these waves. As you can see, it turns up better on a darker color. We mixed the blue with the sienna because it was going to give us a more unified color scheme. That way the paper's brown, brown is brown for the mountains, and the water has a little bit of brown too. And even though it looks blue to us, it has that undertone which our eyes quite like looking at. All right, come through, give it the last layer. Good thing about waves is you don't need to be too exact about making them exact. All right, we are looking at about 17 minutes now. I'm going to get out a thinner fine liner pen. The last one was 0.6 millimeters. This is a 0.4. We're going to use it to give ourselves a little bit more detail on these mountains, and then come through and create some symbols, some towns, so that we can start filling out this map. Now, when we make the symbols for our towns, we want to make them so that they are easily readable and simple for us to do. So I'm just going to start by doing some simple square blocks. Honestly, for these ones, I'll switch to a thicker fine liner to cover the area. All right, then I'll come in, I'll do some roads and some smaller symbols. And remember, when you're making a map, that a lot of the time the roads tend to follow water courses for a number of reasons. They don't always, but they tend to. It's a good rule. Now, in my not inconsiderable experience making maps, I've found that naming things tends to be very time consuming if you have to think about it on the spot. So I'm not really going to try, but I'd like you to try for your own maps. So I'm using a variety of thicknesses of fine liner pen in order to make this map. A thick 0.6 millimeter, a 0.4 and a 0.2. And as I go down, I go from making the mountains to the symbols to the labels. I'm going to come back up now so that I can do areas, but I'm going to use a combination of a thick pen to do the main lettering and a smaller pen to do the serifs so that it becomes more fancy. So you can see I formed the main lettering with a thick pen. I'm going to come through. I'm going to make the letters a little fancier using this thinner pen. All right, we have 2.5 minutes left on the clock. I've got a pretty good map now. I'm going to add some last touches. I'm going to use this gold pen to give it a few more interesting notes before we say that it's ready to be used. I'm also going to add in some detailing here on the compass. Nothing too fancy, we haven't got time for fancy. But we have got time for nice. Just some gold accents to make it feel a little nicer. All right, almost done. I'm going to highlight some of these towns in the gold. I've got seconds. As efforts go, it's not bad. We've used a couple of acrylic paints, some gold and black pens, some white pens, and a little bit of tea. But you could make this in your own home in about half an hour. Adding the details is something that takes more time. The half an hour is just to show you that the process can be really, really quick and done in your own home using the tools that you have at your disposal. Could we have added more to this map? Yeah, I'm pretty sure we could have done. If I extended it even to 45 minutes, I could have filled this thing with details, but it's really just a guide to show you how you can do your own. You can use your own styles, make your own mark on the maps that you're creating, but this is just a guide to show you that map making need not be a long-term, big commitment. You can do it in half an hour using things that are readily available. And I'm pretty happy with the outcome of this challenge. It doesn't look too bad. So, thanks for watching this episode of the Red Quills. I hope it was useful to you. Comment below if you take up this challenge. Show me what you can create. Tell me what time it takes you to create a map of a similar quality in your own world. I'd be really interested to see if you can do it faster than I can, or how you found ways of adding in extra detail without taking up too much time. If you want to check out a closer view of this map, you can find it on the Red Quills Patreon, along with all the other downloadables that I come out with week by week, as well as tidbits of upcoming series and member-exclusive videos. As always, thank you to my supporters. It's fantastic to have such a wonderful community around me. If you want a video in particular, you can comment below. You can chat to me on Discord. You can even join the Patreon community for free to get these downloads or support me. Thanks again to everyone, and I'll see you next week for another map.